They can't control him, and that's the point. Most men think attraction is built on giving more, saying more, proving more. But the truth is far less comfortable. Obsession doesn't grow from abundance. It grows from uncertainty, restraint, and emotional self-control. When a man becomes emotionally predictable, constantly available, and easy to read, he removes the very tension that fuels attraction. But the man who appears cold operates differently. Not because he lacks emotion, but because he has mastered it. This is where Stoicism enters. A Stoic man is not distant for attention. He is grounded. He does not react impulsively. He does not chase validation. He is centered within himself. And ironically, that self-containment creates a powerful pull. Let's break down why women become obsessed with men who seem cold, through the lens of discipline, psychology, and Stoic behavior. Emotional control creates mystery. A man who does not overreact becomes difficult to read. His emotions are not displayed freely, and this creates a natural curiosity. When a woman cannot easily predict how you feel, she begins to invest more energy trying to understand you. Short story. A man named Daniel was dating a woman who would often test his reactions, canceling plans last minute, being distant, then suddenly affectionate. Instead of reacting emotionally, Daniel remained calm and unbothered. He didn't chase explanations. Over time, she became the one initiating conversations, trying harder to keep his attention. His calmness made her curious. Scarcity increases value. A man who is always available becomes common. A man who has his own priorities becomes rare. Stoicism teaches detachment from external validation. When a man is not constantly seeking approval or attention, his presence becomes more valuable. Short story. James was busy building his business. He didn't text all day. He didn't drop everything to respond instantly. When he did show up, he was present, focused, and intentional. The woman he was seeing began to value those moments more, because they weren't guaranteed. Non-reactivity disarms emotional games. Some women test boundaries, not out of malice, but to gauge strength. A reactive man fails these tests. A Stoic man passes without trying. Short story. A woman once ignored Tun for 2 days after an argument, expecting him to chase and apologize repeatedly. Instead, Tun carried on with his life. When she returned, expecting tension, she found calmness. That lack of reaction shifted the power dynamic entirely. Self-sufficiency signals strength. A man who is emotionally independent does not rely on a woman for his happiness. That independence is deeply attractive. Stoicism emphasizes inner fulfillment. When a man is complete on his own, he becomes a choice, not a need. Short story. Michael enjoyed his time alone, reading, working out, building his goals. When he dated, it was an addition to his life, not the center of it. The woman he was with began to feel that she had to earn a place in his world. Controlled attention feels earned. When attention is given too freely, it loses meaning. When it is controlled, it feels valuable. Short story. A man named Leo didn't compliment excessively. But when he did, it was specific and genuine. The woman he was seeing remembered those moments clearly, because they weren't frequent. They felt earned. Emotional stability feels safe. A Stoic man is not ruled by mood swings. He remains steady. This creates a paradox. He may seem cold, but he is actually more emotionally reliable than most. Short story. During a stressful moment, when everything around her felt chaotic, a woman turned to a man who barely spoke much. But his calm presence, steady voice, and lack of panic grounded her. She began to associate him with stability. Detachment builds desire. Desire grows in space, not in constant presence. A Stoic man understands when to step back. Not as a tactic, but as a natural part of his life. Short story. After spending a great weekend together, instead of overextending, Alex returned to his routine. He didn't flood her with messages. That space made her replay moments, think about him, and miss him. He is not easily impressed. A man who is not overly impressed signals high standards. Short story. When a woman tried to show off to impress David, he acknowledged it calmly but didn't overreact. He appreciated it without exaggeration. She found herself trying harder to gain his approval. He chooses, he doesn't chase. Chasing signals lack. Choosing signals power. A Stoic man evaluates, observes, and decides. Short story. Instead of trying to win her over constantly, Emeka paid attention to her behavior. When he noticed inconsistency, he pulled back. That shift made her realize she could lose him. Inner peace is magnetic. A man who is at peace with himself radiates something rare. He is not desperate. Not anxious. Not seeking constant reassurance. Short story. In a room full of loud, attention-seeking men, one man sat quietly, confident, composed. He didn't need to dominate the space. Yet, somehow, attention gravitated toward him. This is not about becoming emotionally unavailable or pretending not to care. That is weakness disguised as strength. True coldness is discipline. It is the ability to feel deeply but act with control. It is choosing not to react impulsively. It is building a life so full that no one person becomes your emotional center. That is what creates attraction that turns into obsession. Not manipulation. Not games. But self-mastery. If you want this kind of presence, focus on yourself. Build your discipline. Control your emotions. Create a life that does not revolve around validation. And when you show up with intention, not desperation. They try to read him, but he never explains himself. A man grounded in Stoic discipline does not feel the need to constantly clarify his emotions, justify his actions, or over-communicate his intentions. This restraint creates a psychological gap, and that gap pulls people in. Obsession often begins where certainty ends. 11. He doesn't over-explain himself. Most men talk too much when they feel pressure. They try to fix misunderstandings instantly. They rush to be understood. A Stoic man doesn't. He speaks when necessary. He lets his actions carry weight. And when there is silence, he allows it to exist without panic. Short story. A woman once questioned Kunal about why he didn't reply quickly. Instead of sending long explanations, he simply said, "I was busy. I'll talk when I'm free." Then he returned to his day. No overthinking. No emotional essay. That simplicity made her pause, because she was used to men over-explaining. 12. He is comfortable with losing people. This is where most men fail. They act cold, until they sense they might lose the woman, then they panic, chase, and overcompensate. A Stoic man understands something deeper. Anything that can be lost was never fully under his control. Short story. After weeks of talking, a woman suddenly became distant with Ibrahim. Instead of chasing, he respected the distance. Days passed. Then she came back, asking why he didn't reach out. His response was simple. "You pulled away." That calm acceptance made her realize she couldn't manipulate his attention. 13. He sets boundaries without emotion. Boundaries are not loud. They are not aggressive. They are quiet decisions followed by consistent action. Short story. A woman repeatedly canceled plans with Sola at the last minute. The third time it happened, he simply stopped making plans. No argument. No complaint. When she noticed and asked why, he calmly said, "I prefer consistency." That was it. No drama, just a standard. 14. He is focused on purpose, not people. When a man's life revolves around a woman, she becomes his center. That pressure eventually kills attraction. But when a man is driven by purpose, everything else becomes secondary. Short story. Chinedu was deeply focused on his career goals. Even when he liked someone, he never allowed distractions to derail his path. The woman he was seeing noticed this. Instead of feeling ignored, she felt drawn to his direction, because it showed he had something bigger than the relationship. 15. He doesn't seek constant validation. A man who constantly needs reassurance becomes emotionally dependent. A Stoic man validates himself. Short story. A woman once asked Femi, "Do you miss me?" expecting a long emotional response. He replied, "I enjoy my time with you." Nothing exaggerated. Nothing needy. That grounded response made her think more deeply about his feelings instead of taking them for granted. 16. Silence becomes his power. Most people are uncomfortable with silence. They rush to fill it. But silence creates tension, and tension creates attraction. Short story. During a conversation, a woman teased Dale, expecting him to react immediately. Instead, he smiled slightly and said nothing for a few seconds. That pause shifted the entire dynamic. She leaned in, waiting, curious about what he would say next. 17. He observes more than he reacts. A Stoic man studies behavior instead of reacting to words. This makes him harder to manipulate. Short story. A woman told Uche she was not ready for anything serious. But her actions suggested otherwise: constant calls, consistent attention. Instead of reacting to her words, he observed her behavior. Over time, she began investing more, because he didn't rush to label anything. 18. He doesn't compete for attention. Most men compete. They try to outdo others, impress more, give more. A Stoic man steps out of competition entirely. Short story. At a gathering, multiple men were trying to impress the same woman. Loud jokes, flashy conversations. One man, however, remained composed, speaking only when necessary. Later, she approached him instead. His lack of competition made him stand out. 19. He accepts reality without resistance. Stoicism teaches acceptance of what is. A man who resists reality becomes frustrated. A man who accepts it becomes calm. Short story. When a woman told Ade she needed space, he didn't argue or try to change her mind. He simply said, "Take your time." That lack of resistance removed pressure, and made her reflect on her own feelings faster. 20. He is consistent, not predictable. Consistency builds trust. Predictability kills excitement. A Stoic man is consistent in values, but not in behavior patterns that become boring. Short story. A man named Toby always kept his word. If he said he would call, he did. But he didn't follow a rigid pattern of communication. Sometimes he was present, sometimes focused on his own life. That balance kept things stable yet intriguing. At this point, you begin to see the pattern. This coldness is not emotional emptiness. It is emotional discipline. It is the refusal to be controlled by impulse, fear, or the need for validation. And that discipline creates a rare kind of presence, one that people feel but cannot fully understand. 21. He doesn't rush intimacy. In a world where everything is fast, restraint becomes powerful. A Stoic man takes his time, emotionally and physically. Short story. Instead of rushing into deep emotional conversations, Musa allowed things to unfold naturally. The woman he was seeing found herself opening up more, because there was no pressure. His patience created depth. 22. He remains grounded in chaos. When situations become emotional, most people lose control. A Stoic man becomes even calmer. Short story. During an argument, a woman raised her voice at Kelvin, expecting escalation. Instead, he lowered his tone. His calmness made her aware of her own behavior, and the argument dissolved faster than expected. 23. He values his time deeply. Time is the one thing you cannot regain. A Stoic man protects it. Short story. When a conversation became repetitive and unproductive, Bala simply said, "Let's talk later," and ended the call. Not out of disrespect, but out of self-respect. That made his time feel valuable. 24. He doesn't try to be liked by everyone. The need to be liked leads to compromise. A Stoic man accepts that not everyone will understand him. Short story. A woman once told Segan he was too distant. Instead of changing himself to fit her expectation, he said, That's how I am. She stayed, not because he changed, but because he didn't. 25. He is selective with his energy. Energy is limited. A Stoic man invests it wisely. Short story. Rather than engaging in endless texting, Hassan preferred meaningful conversations. The woman he spoke to began valuing those moments more, because they felt intentional. This is where obsession deepens. Because now, it is no longer just curiosity. It becomes emotional investment. The more a person tries to understand someone who remains grounded, controlled, and slightly out of reach, the more attached they become. But understand this clearly. If you try to fake this behavior, it will fail. People can sense inconsistency. True Stoic presence comes from internal work, not external performance. It is built through discipline, self-awareness, and a life that does not depend on others for meaning. Focus on becoming that man. Not for obsession, but for control over your own life. And everything else will follow. They get closer, yet he never loses himself. At this stage, the difference becomes undeniable. Most men, once they feel connection, begin to merge their identity with the relationship. They adjust, they bend, they slowly abandon themselves to keep the other person. A Stoic man does the opposite. He connects, but he never collapses into the connection. He maintains his identity in relationships. A relationship does not redefine him. It complements him. He does not change his values, his routines, or his direction just to keep someone comfortable. Short story. When Kola started seeing someone seriously, nothing about his core routine changed. He still trained in the morning, still focused on his work, still kept his personal time. The woman noticed this consistency and realized she was entering his world, not replacing it. He doesn't fear silence after connection. After deep moments, many men feel the urge to maintain constant contact. A Stoic man allows space even after intimacy. Short story. After a long, meaningful conversation that lasted hours, instead of continuing the next day with endless messages, Tarek simply went back to his routine. That pause made her revisit the conversation in her mind, strengthening its impact. He controls his impulses. Attraction often leads to impulsive actions, over-texting, oversharing, over-giving. A Stoic man resists this. Short story. A woman sent a late-night message to Zayn, expecting immediate engagement. He saw it, but chose to respond the next morning when he was fully present. That control over impulse made his attention feel intentional, not reactive. He doesn't try to win arguments. Most arguments are driven by ego. A Stoic man focuses on understanding, not winning. Short story. During a disagreement, instead of proving his point repeatedly, Nambi simply said, "I understand your perspective." That ended the tension faster than any argument could. She expected resistance, but found calm. He accepts imperfection. He does not idealize people. He sees flaws clearly and decides consciously whether to accept them. Short story. When a woman showed inconsistency, instead of ignoring it or trying to fix her, Idris acknowledged it internally. He adjusted his expectations without confrontation. That quiet awareness gave him control over his emotions. He doesn't seek to impress, he expresses. Impressing is performance. Expression is authenticity. A Stoic man is himself without exaggeration. Short story. Instead of trying to appear more successful than he was, Kunmi spoke honestly about his journey, his progress, his challenges. That honesty felt more real than any attempt to impress. He remains calm when interest fluctuates. Attraction is not constant. It rises and falls. A Stoic man understands this and does not panic when interest shifts. Short story. When messages became less frequent, instead of asking, "What's wrong?" Sadiq simply matched the energy and continued his life. Days later, her interest returned, because he didn't pressure the situation. He doesn't overinvest too early. He gives attention gradually, not all at once. Short story. Instead of planning elaborate gestures early on, Fullerin kept things simple, short meetings, meaningful conversations. As time passed, his investment grew naturally. This pacing made everything feel more genuine. He is grounded in reality, not fantasy. Many men fall in love with potential. A Stoic man focuses on what is real. Short story. When a woman spoke about future plans too early, Emeka listened but didn't get carried away. He stayed present, observing consistency over time. That grounded approach kept him from emotional overcommitment. He doesn't lose composure under pressure. Pressure reveals character. A Stoic man remains steady regardless of external stress. Short story. When plans suddenly changed and everything became chaotic, rather than reacting with frustration, Bolu adapted calmly. That composure made him appear dependable in unpredictable situations. Now the pattern becomes deeper. This is no longer just about attraction. It is about emotional positioning. The Stoic man is centered. Others begin to orbit around that center. He understands that attention is currency. Where attention goes, attachment grows. He gives it carefully. Short story. Instead of scrolling endlessly through messages, Yakubu limited his communication to moments that mattered. When he spoke, it was focused. That made his attention feel rare and valuable. He is patient with outcomes. Impatience leads to forced results. A Stoic man allows things to unfold. Short story. Rather than pushing for commitment quickly, Haruna allowed the connection to develop naturally. Over time, the woman herself initiated deeper conversations about the relationship. He doesn't try to control others. Control creates resistance. Freedom creates attraction. Short story. When a woman wanted to spend time with friends instead of him, Chucks encouraged it. No guilt. No pressure. That freedom made her return with more interest, not less. He knows when to walk away. The ultimate power is the ability to leave. A Stoic man does not stay where he is not valued. Short story. After repeated inconsistency, instead of arguing, Jide simply withdrew completely. No announcements. No drama. His absence spoke louder than any words, and it left a lasting impact. He is internally driven. External validation fades. Internal purpose remains. Short story. While others were focused on social approval, Sei focused on his long-term vision. That direction made him stand out, not because he tried to, but because he didn't follow the crowd. At this level, obsession is no longer accidental. It becomes a response to something rare. A man who is emotionally stable, self-contained, disciplined, and purposeful is uncommon. And rarity creates desire. But this must be understood clearly. This is not about manipulating emotions. It is about mastering your own. If you attempt to imitate these behaviors without internal discipline, they will feel forced, and they will fail. Real Stoicism is quiet. It is not about appearing cold. It is about being in control. So instead of asking how to make someone obsessed with you, ask how to become someone who does not need obsession. Because that is where real power begins. They feel him, but they can never fully have him. This is where the dynamic reaches its peak. Because the moment someone realizes they cannot completely possess you, control you, or predict you, their emotional investment deepens. Not because you are playing games, but because you are no longer playing at all. He is present, but never clingy. Presence is powerful. Clinginess is suffocating. A Stoic man gives full attention in the moment, but he does not linger beyond it. Short story. When Amina spent time with her, he was fully engaged, no distractions, no divided attention. But once he left, he didn't continue the interaction endlessly through messages. That contrast made his presence feel intense and memorable. He doesn't build his life around her. Many men slowly reorganize their lives around a woman. A Stoic man does not. Short story. When plans conflicted with his personal goals, Victor chose his priorities without hesitation. He didn't apologize for it. Instead of pushing her away, it made her respect his structure and want to be part of it. He is unmoved by external opinions. A man influenced by others becomes unstable. A Stoic man remains grounded in his own judgment. Short story. When friends tried to influence Musa's opinion about the woman he was seeing, he listened, but made his own decision. That independence reflected in how he carried himself around her. He keeps parts of himself private. Not everything needs to be shared. Mystery is not created, it is preserved. Short story. Even after months of knowing each other, there were still aspects of Tun's life he revealed gradually. Not out of secrecy, but because he valued depth over exposure. That slow discovery kept her engaged. He doesn't react to jealousy games. Jealousy only works on those who fear loss. A Stoic man does not play along. Short story. When a woman mentioned other men to provoke a reaction, Kalechi simply acknowledged it and moved on. No tension. No competition. That lack of reaction removed the power from the tactic. He gives space without losing connection. Distance often weakens unstable connections. But strong presence survives space. Short story. When they couldn't see each other for weeks, instead of forcing constant communication, Sani kept things minimal but meaningful. When they reunited, the connection felt stronger, not weaker. He doesn't chase emotional highs. Many relationships become cycles of drama and excitement. A Stoic man avoids this pattern. Short story. Instead of engaging in unnecessary emotional ups and downs, Deiji kept things steady. At first, it felt unfamiliar to her, but over time, she began to value the peace he brought. He responds, he doesn't react. Reaction is immediate and emotional. Response is measured and intentional. Short story. After receiving a message that could have triggered irritation, Yugo waited before replying. When he did respond, it was calm and clear. That control prevented escalation and maintained respect. He is comfortable being misunderstood. The need to be fully understood creates pressure. A Stoic man accepts that not everyone will get him. Short story. When a woman said, "You're hard to read," Ao simply smiled and said, "Maybe." He didn't rush to explain himself. That acceptance made her more curious, not less. He operates from inner discipline, not external approval. This is the foundation of everything. Without discipline, all of this becomes performance. Short story. Every morning before the world demanded anything from him, Hassan focused on his routine, training, reflection, work. That discipline shaped how he showed up in every interaction, including relationships. Now everything becomes clear. It was never about being cold. It was never about detachment for the sake of control. It was always about self-mastery. A man who controls his emotions. A man who values his time. A man who is grounded in purpose. A man who does not chase validation. Becomes naturally attractive. Not because he tries to be, but because he doesn't need to be. And that is what creates obsession. Not loud effort. Not constant attention. But quiet strength. So if you are watching this, understand. You don't need to become distant. You don't need to pretend not to care. You don't need to play games. What you need is discipline. Emotional control. A life that is full, with or without anyone else. Because the moment you stop needing to be chosen is the moment you become someone others don't want to lose. They try to pull him in, but he stands where he is. At this final level, everything about him becomes clear. He is not resisting connection. He is not avoiding emotion. He is simply anchored. And when a man is anchored, no one can shake him out of himself. He doesn't abandon his principles for attraction. Attraction often tempts men to compromise. A Stoic man refuses. Short story. When a woman pressured Rotami to act against his values just to keep her interested, he calmly declined. He didn't argue. He didn't justify. He simply stayed aligned. That quiet firmness made her see him differently. He knows the difference between interest and attachment. Interest is light. Attachment is heavy. A Stoic man moves slowly between the two. Short story. Even though he enjoyed her company, Sadiq never rushed to label what they had. He let the connection breathe. Over time, she became more emotionally invested, because he didn't force depth too early. He doesn't let emotions dictate decisions. Feelings are temporary. Decisions are lasting. Short story. After an intense moment of connection, instead of making promises driven by emotion, Kunal chose to stay consistent with his actions. That stability made his presence more trustworthy. He understands that less can be more. Overexposure reduces value. Restraint increases impact. Short story. Instead of talking for hours every day, Femi kept conversations meaningful but limited. Each interaction left something unsaid, and that unfinished feeling kept her thinking about him. He doesn't seek to fill every gap. Silence, distance, and uncertainty are not enemies. They are part of the dynamic. Short story. When conversations slowed down, instead of forcing new topics, Toby allowed the pause. That space made her reach out first, restarting the interaction. He is grounded in self-respect. Respect is not demanded. It is demonstrated. Short story. When a woman spoke to him in a dismissive tone, Jamie didn't react emotionally. He simply reduced his engagement. That quiet withdrawal communicated more than any argument. He doesn't chase closure. Most people need explanations for everything. A stoic man accepts what is, even without answers. Short story. When a connection suddenly faded without clear reason, Bello didn't chase for closure. He moved forward. Weeks later, she returned, confused by his silence. He is comfortable with uncertainty. The future is never guaranteed. A stoic man accepts this fully. Short story. Instead of constantly asking, "Where is this going?" Idris focused on the present moments they shared. That lack of pressure made the connection feel natural and unforced. He gives value without losing himself. He contributes, but he does not overextend. Short story. When she needed support, Emeka was there, calm, helpful, grounded. But once the moment passed, he returned to his own life. He didn't linger for appreciation. He lives by discipline, not emotion. This is the final foundation. Everything traces back to this. Short story. No matter how his day went, good or bad, Sei followed his routine. He didn't let emotions decide his actions. That consistency shaped his entire presence. Now you see the full picture. There is no trick. No hidden tactic. No manipulation. What people call cold is often just a man who does not react impulsively, does not depend on validation, does not abandon himself, does not chase what is uncertain. And that kind of man is rare. Because most people are driven by emotion, fear, and the need for approval. So when someone encounters a man who is different, they feel it immediately. They can't explain it. They can't control it. And because they can't control it, they begin to think about it more. That is where obsession is born. Not from what you give, but from what you don't give away too easily. But remember this. If your goal is to make someone obsessed with you, you've already lost the frame. Because you are still seeking validation. The real goal is simpler. Control yourself. Build your life. Stay grounded in your values. And let everything else be a result, not a pursuit. Because when you master yourself, you stop chasing attention. And attention starts finding you. They reach for more, but he never overextends. At this point, the difference is undeniable. Most men give more when they feel someone pulling away. They increase effort, increase attention, increase emotional exposure, hoping to secure the connection. A stoic man does the opposite. He remains steady. And that steadiness creates tension that cannot be ignored. He doesn't reward inconsistency. Attention given at the wrong time weakens your position. A stoic man gives attention to consistency, not confusion. Short story. When a woman only reached out when she felt bored, Sola responded politely, but never increased his effort. When she became consistent, his engagement naturally grew. She learned quickly that access to him had to be earned through stability. He is unattached to outcomes. He puts in effort, but he is not emotionally dependent on results. Short story. When going on a date, Kareem didn't focus on impressing or winning her over. He focused on experiencing the moment. Whether it worked out or not didn't change his energy, and that made him more relaxed, more real. He doesn't over-celebrate attention. Many men become overly excited when they receive interest. A stoic man remains composed. Short story. When a woman suddenly increased her attention, texts, calls, compliments, Yusuf acknowledged it calmly, without getting carried away. His steady response prevented the dynamic from becoming unbalanced. He keeps his emotional pace slow. Fast emotions create fast endings. Slow emotions create depth. Short story. Even when the connection felt intense, Tun didn't rush into emotional declarations. He allowed things to build gradually. That pacing made every stage feel more meaningful. He doesn't fill silence with noise. Silence is not awkward, it is revealing. Short story. During a quiet moment together, instead of forcing conversation, Folarin remained comfortable. That calm silence made her more aware of his presence, and more drawn to it. He observes effort before investing more. He doesn't blindly give. He responds to what is shown. Short story. When a woman made time to see him despite a busy schedule, Ibrahim noticed. Instead of verbal praise, he increased his effort naturally. His actions matched hers, nothing more, nothing less. He doesn't get lost in emotional highs. Excitement can cloud judgment. A stoic man stays clear. Short story. After an amazing weekend together, instead of assuming everything had reached a new level, Delhi returned to his routine. That grounded response prevented emotional overinvestment. He values consistency over chemistry. Chemistry fades. Consistency builds. Short story. Even though he felt strong attraction, Musa paid more attention to how consistent she was over time. That focus kept him from making decisions based purely on emotion. He doesn't chase reassurance. Insecurity seeks constant confirmation. A stoic man trusts what is shown. Short story. Instead of asking, "Do you still like me?" Segan simply observed her actions. When they aligned, he stayed. When they didn't, he adjusted. No need for constant questions. He remains grounded even when things go well. Success can be just as distracting as failure. Short story. When everything seemed perfect, and the connection felt strong, Ao didn't relax his discipline. He stayed consistent with his habits, his focus, his mindset. That stability kept the foundation strong. Now it becomes undeniable. This is not about acting cold. This is about being unshaken. He doesn't react to emotional pressure. Pressure often reveals weakness. A stoic man absorbs it without breaking. Short story. When she demanded immediate answers about the future, instead of reacting defensively, Uche calmly said, "Things take time." That response reduced pressure instead of feeding it. He keeps his standards quiet but firm. Standards don't need announcements. They need enforcement. Short story. When behavior didn't meet his expectations, Chinida didn't argue, he adjusted his presence. Less time, less attention. The message was clear without confrontation. He doesn't let attention distract him from purpose. Attraction is temporary. Purpose is lasting. Short story. Even during the most exciting phase of the connection, Sadiq didn't lose focus on his goals. That discipline made him appear grounded and reliable. He doesn't overgive to maintain interest. Overgiving leads to imbalance. Short story. Instead of constantly planning everything, Emeka allowed her to contribute as well. That balance made the connection feel mutual, not one-sided. He accepts when energy changes. Nothing stays the same forever. Short story. When the energy between them shifted slightly, Bello didn't panic. He adjusted, observed, and allowed things to evolve naturally. He is not driven by fear of loss. Fear leads to poor decisions. A Stoic man is guided by clarity. Short story. Even when he liked her deeply, Kunmi didn't act out of fear of losing her. He stayed consistent with who he was, and that made his actions more genuine. He doesn't try to lock things down too early. Rushing creates resistance. Short story. Instead of pushing for exclusivity quickly, Toby allowed the connection to develop. That patience made her more willing to commit later. He remains emotionally balanced. Not too high. Not too low. Short story. Whether the day was good or bad, Idris maintained the same calm energy. That balance made him predictable in stability, but not boring in presence. He doesn't need to be understood immediately. Understanding takes time. Short story. When she misinterpreted his actions, Femi didn't rush to correct everything. He allowed time and consistency to clarify his character. He stays rooted in himself, always. This is the final layer. Everything comes back to this. Short story. No matter who entered or left his life, Sei remained the same at his core. His habits, his mindset, his discipline, unchanged. That consistency made him unshakable. Now the truth is complete. There is no secret formula. No manipulation. No strategy to control others. Only this. A man who has mastered himself becomes difficult to replace, difficult to understand, and impossible to control. And in a world full of emotional reactions, that kind of man stands alone. So don't aim to be cold. Aim to be disciplined. Aim to be grounded. Aim to be in control of your own mind. Because when you reach that level, you won't need to create attraction. You will embody it. They stay longer, because he never tries to hold them. At the deepest level, the dynamic becomes effortless. Not because he has done something special, but because he has stopped doing what weakens most men. He allows people to choose freely. Control pushes people away. Freedom pulls them closer. Short story. When she said she needed time to figure things out, Zubair didn't resist. He gave her space without conditions. That freedom made her return, not out of pressure, but out of choice. He doesn't attach his worth to attention. Attention is temporary. Self-worth must be permanent. Short story. When messages slowed down, Farouk didn't question his value. He continued his routine, his work, his life. That internal stability prevented him from reacting emotionally. He doesn't try to be enough for everyone. Trying to fit every expectation leads to losing yourself. Short story. When she hinted that he should be more expressive, Whale listened, but didn't force a personality change. He remained authentic. And that authenticity held more weight than performance. He understands that desire needs space. Constant presence kills curiosity. Short story. After spending time together, Kazim didn't extend the interaction unnecessarily. He left at the right moment. That timing made the experience feel complete, but not exhausted. He doesn't let loneliness dictate his actions. Loneliness creates desperation. A Stoic man sits with it, without reacting. Short story. On quiet nights, instead of reaching out impulsively, Malik focused on his own growth, reading, thinking, planning. That discipline strengthened his independence. He accepts that not everything will work out. Not every connection is meant to last. Short story. When things naturally faded, Tun didn't try to revive what had lost energy. He accepted it and moved forward. That acceptance kept his peace intact. He doesn't overvalue early attraction. Strong beginnings don't guarantee strong endings. Short story. Even though the initial connection felt intense, Ibrahim stayed observant. He didn't assume permanence. That awareness kept him emotionally balanced. He moves with clarity, not confusion. Confusion leads to hesitation. Clarity leads to calm action. Short story. When he noticed mixed signals, Sola didn't try to decode them endlessly. He simply reduced his investment. That clarity removed unnecessary stress. He doesn't depend on emotional highs to feel alive. Excitement is not the foundation of fulfillment. Short story. While others chase constant stimulation, Emeka found satisfaction in routine, discipline, progress, purpose. That grounded energy made him different. He leaves situations with dignity. How you leave matters more than how you stay. Short story. When it was time to walk away, Colonel did so quietly. No arguments. No long explanations. Just distance. That calm exit left a stronger impression than any emotional reaction. Now everything aligns. What people call obsession is often just a reaction to something unfamiliar. A man who does not chase, does not overreact, does not depend on validation, does not abandon himself, becomes rare. He trusts time to reveal everything. He doesn't rush clarity. Short story. Instead of asking endless questions about where things were going, Sadiq allowed time to show consistency. That patience gave him answers without pressure. He doesn't argue with reality. He accepts what is shown. Short story. When effort wasn't reciprocated, Bello didn't try to change it. He adjusted his position. That acceptance protected his energy. He is not afraid to be alone. Alone does not mean lacking. It means self-sufficient. Short story. Even without constant companionship, Femi felt complete. That independence made his interactions feel like choices, not needs. He doesn't seek to be remembered, but he is. Impact is not forced. It happens naturally. Short story. Months after they stopped talking, she still remembered small things about Ao. His calmness, his presence, his restraint. He never tried to leave an impression, but he did. He remains unchanged by external shifts. People change. Situations change. He remains steady. Short story. Whether things were going well or fading away, Idris maintained the same composure. That consistency made him reliable in an unpredictable world. He understands that silence speaks. Not everything needs words. Short story. Instead of explaining his absence, Toby simply created distance. That silence communicated his decision more clearly than any speech. He doesn't try to recreate what is gone. Once something ends, he lets it end. Short story. When a past connection tried to return, Emeka didn't rush back into it. He evaluated, then decided based on the present, not nostalgia. He is guided by discipline in every area. Not just relationships. His entire life reflects control. Short story. From how he woke up, to how he worked, to how he interacted, Say's discipline was consistent. That alignment made his presence strong. He lives without needing to be understood. Understanding is a bonus, not a requirement. Short story. When people misread him, Kunmi didn't correct every assumption. He let his actions define him over time. He masters himself, and that changes everything. This is the final truth. Everything comes back to self-mastery. Short story. Through discipline, reflection, and consistency, a man transformed his life, not for attention, not for validation, but for himself. And as a result, everything around him began to change. This is the end of it. No tricks. No manipulation. No performance. Just a man who knows himself, controls himself, respects himself, builds himself. And because of that, he becomes unforgettable. Not because he tries to be, but because he doesn't need to be. So don't aim to be cold. Aim to be disciplined. Aim to be grounded. Aim to be complete, with or without anyone else. Because when you reach that level, you don't chase attention. You don't chase validation. You don't chase people. You become the one they can't ignore. They can't predict him, and that's what pulls them in. Most men give too much, too fast. They explain everything, react to everything, and chase certainty. But attraction doesn't grow from certainty, it grows from discipline, restraint, and emotional control. A stoic man isn't cold because he lacks feelings. He's controlled because he understands them. A man who doesn't overreact becomes mysterious. When a woman can't easily read you, she invests more energy trying to understand you. Short story. She cancelled plans last minute, expecting frustration. He simply said, "No problem," and continued his day. Later, she came back more engaged, because she didn't get the reaction she expected. A man who values his time becomes rare. When you're always available, you become easy to replace. When you have priorities, your presence gains weight. Short story. He didn't text all day. But when he did, he was focused and intentional. She began to value those moments more than constant messages. A man who doesn't chase removes pressure. When you stop trying to win someone, they start choosing you freely. Short story. She became distant, expecting him to chase. He didn't. Days later, she returned, curious why he didn't run after her. A man who controls his emotions becomes stable. Stability feels safe, even if it appears cold at first. Short story. During an argument, instead of raising his voice, he lowered it. The tension disappeared faster than expected. A man who has his own life becomes attractive. When your world doesn't revolve around someone, they feel the need to earn a place in it. Short story. He stayed consistent with his routine, work, goals, discipline. She adjusted to his world instead of him chasing hers. A man who gives space creates desire. Constant presence kills curiosity. Space allows emotions to grow. Short story. After a great time together, he didn't overextend. That silence made her replay the moments in her mind. A man who isn't afraid to lose becomes powerful. Fear leads to chasing. Confidence allows you to walk away. Short story. When inconsistency continued, he quietly pulled back. No drama. That absence made her realize his value. This is not about playing games. It's about self-mastery. Control your emotions. Value your time. Build your life. Because when you stop needing validation, you become someone others don't want to lose. Follow me for more insights like this.